Welcome to another edition of Your Wildest Fantasy Football Show, a Tuesday edition.
Tuesday.
Last Tuesday edition of the season. Tony, how are you feeling? It's a pretty bittersweet moment, I would say.
It is bittersweet. It was a lot of fun. Had a lot of laughs, a lot of cries, a lot of information I had to know. It was kind of like going back to college for the third time. But I enjoyed it. Parties were great. Fans were immaculate. So, it's bittersweet. Bittersweet.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I wouldn't compare it to going back to college. Again, like you for a third time. But I don't know that I would. It's been quite the experience, quite the roller coaster of events. We've had our ups, we've had our downs. Certainly tested to the limits. But like you said, I think it's the fans that really bring everything together.
Amen.
Our second take extras, our 949s, our Rendons,
Our serial
King
killers.
40s, our
Right.
serial killers that watch this show. And a lot of people kind of look over the serial killers that watch this show. 949s, everybody else that makes this show possible. Speaking of 949, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you also.
Happy New Year, 949.
49. Hope you had a great holiday.
I hope so.
Fortunately, Rex Burkhead was not friendly to him in the semifinals. Sometimes that's what happened in life. Yes, I lost in the semifinals by 0.2. So I feel your pain mightily in that one. It's one of the downsides of fantasy football if you're on the opposite end of it. And if you are on the beneficial end, it's one of the great things about fantasy football. It's one of the things about fantasy football, for better or worse. Reason we play the game. Yeah. So we have a lot to talk about in today's show. We have our end of the year awards. If you guys do play in any leagues that go into week 18 and you have any questions about that, I'm sure we could roll through some things for that.
Right.
We would be happy to help in any way that we can for the last week of the season. I know that in ESPN leagues where they have the 2-week playoffs, a good amount of leagues are still going on. This show is more geared towards our end of the year awards and doing a bit of an early 2022 fantasy draft. I don't know if we're going to do first round, second round. We'll figure that out when the time comes, probably time dependent.
Right.
We see open a league for viewers. We'd love to do that.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we're going to hear more about, we are going to do a Sunday show that will probably, if people watch and ask questions, be more oriented towards the week 18 matchups and who's going to rest and who's going to play. So definitely tune into that, 11:30 to 12:30 on Sunday before kickoff. We will break down probably a lot more of the week 18 storylines then. That's probably when that is going to be focused around. But if there are any waiver questions or anything like that, we would be happy to answer those as well. But for now, we did a mid-season awards.
We did.
And while I don't think either of us remember who we picked for those,
I remember like 2 people, and I think that's about it.
I didn't even remember the awards, and you were the one who sent me that. So thank you for that.
You are.
And also, you are probably going to be the one that is more so hosting this segment and reading down the line, because although you did send them to me, I think I looked at them, but this is going to be just instinctive, which may be the most honest of answers when it comes to.
It did say you read my message, but you didn't reply. So we'll just talk about that later in our couple counseling session. But it is what it is.
Fair. What is the first award that we are going to cover today?
I think first one always has to be MVP. who do you think was the MVP of the season? I have a one and I have a two, and they're both very close. So I'd love
Yeah,
to hear your one. Love to hear your one.
I think it's going to be a pretty unanimous decision, not only amongst us, but amongst many people for the MVP, and that's going to be Cooper Cup. Cooper Cup's just been lighting it up pretty much all season long.
Mhm.
I think his dud week was even in double digits. So, like, he's going to set, perhaps, I think they're going to go for it this week in setting the wide receiver record for yards. So, I think Cooper Cup will have another good week this week, maybe even a great week this week, and is going to be the MVP for me pretty easily. If you're going to look somewhere else, obviously Jonathan Taylor is another person who should be in that conversation.
Yep.
Um, but I just think the value that you got with Cooper Cup, taking him probably somewhere in like the fourth, fifth round, is something that you couldn't get with Taylor, who was going in the first round, early second typically.
Yeah. Yeah. Cooper Cup was the unanimous um, MVP of the season. Just on an absolute tear. When you're looking at full point PPR, he is like 40 points above the next closest person of all players, which is Josh Allen, who's a quarterback who normally averages like 20 points a game for quarterbacks. But Jonathan Taylor, I thought was an interesting argument. He really had two down weeks earlier on in the season, but then besides that, I mean, he was he was the only consistent back. So I just kind of put them really close together, just because. Um, I mean, Jonathan Taylor deserves a lot of respect for being, the only like early on starter who or early draft pick who remained healthy. And
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a big thing about it too, right? It's like those first round running backs
mhm,
didn't really give a great return on investment this
right.
year. I'd be interested. This is a little bit on tangent, but a lot of people, I know I'm typically a heavy running back drafter. I think a
Mhm,
lot of people are heavy into drafting running backs early in most of their drafts. A lot of people even go running back, running back.
right.
Does what happened this season, and I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more,
Mhm.
or we'll see that more in the mock draft. But quickly, does that change your strategy at all for next year and going running back early?
No. Um, I think running back is just such, as we're talking about later in our awards, running back is just a position that is so much more top heavy than wide receiver. That, I mean, obviously you pick up some of the big guys, but you can go like, I'm picking up a lower end wide receiver before I'm picking up, or a lower end running back before I'm picking up, a wide receiver, just because of the inconsistency a wide receiver is going to have week in and week out. Whereas if you can get your hands on a nice, sturdy running back, um, they're more injury prone. We saw that with all the big names going down. You need to have a lot of good running backs on your roster, and then you need to have a couple of handcuffs before you start worrying about wide receiver. So I think some people are going to be a little bit more concerned about it. And also, I mean, seeing Cooper Cup just outshine every single player um, is definitely going to be in people's minds. But for me, I'm still going to go running back early, just because I think you need to find a couple guys who can carry the ball for you consistently, and then plug and play wide receivers, because those are easier positions to fill.
Fair yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Mhm,
A little bit. I think an argument could be made towards the Kelsey direction,
mhm.
but you see, like Devontae is coming on now, and I guess he's had a down year for Devontae, but like he didn't have that game breaking year like a Jonathan Taylor or like a Cooper Cup or like in the way that some of these top running backs can have. So I'm probably going to stay with running back
Mhm.
heavier a little bit more as well. Next award.
Who would be your playoff MVP? Like bump down. Um, I kind of went with someone who I went with a little lesser known guy, someone we have talked about on the show, but someone who really had a much better last like 5 weeks here. Um, Someone who kind of pushed you into the playoffs and then carried you with continual strong performances throughout the playoffs.
I actually think this one might be the same for both of us as well.
I think so. If it's the guy we talked about pre-show,
Yes. Is it a
Yeah.
Detroit Lions wide
It is.
receiver, which is the
It
most
is.
unexpected of places to get your playoff MVP?
He was my 1A to my 1B was a running back in Vegas, of all places. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, was my MVP for the playoffs just because since week 13, he's had at least 15 points in every single game. And we talked about him quite a few times on waiver wire shows like late on in the season. So you could have picked him up pretty late in the season. And if you picked him up, you could have plugged and played him, and he could have potentially won you a league just because he has put up just great numbers. I mean, 15 plus, 23, 24. I mean, he was going on a tear. So, I mean, he was my wide receiver who I thought was the MVP by far.
Yeah, I mean, he was my number one as well, just because, like you said, somebody that you could have just picked up on waivers and somebody who was doubted so much that they may have been available even after having some good weeks. Because when Tim Boyle came in, the expectation was, I don't know if Amon-Ra is going to be able to get the ball with Tim Boyle back there at quarterback, not the highest of expectations for him. So he might have been out there a second time, even after proving himself. Also was one of the top people in our names draft. So that gets him on our
Double.
good side as well, the sun god.
Exactly.
And yeah, like just kind of came out of nowhere is the best way to put it with him. Some of the other guys that I think could be in that conversation are not as readily available as he was. I think the other name that I would put in that mix is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews went off. He was going to be the other person that I would have nominated or would have been in my like finalists. 28, 35, 26, and 15, like just monster weeks, especially when I think the expectations were even lower for him because they were missing Lamar Jackson. Done it with what? Did they have Lamar in that stretch at all? Or was it just Huntley and Josh Johnson? I was going to say he did it with at least two quarterbacks, maybe even three quarterbacks.
I'm looking.
Sustained good numbers. It's pretty impressive either way.
Lamar hasn't played since Cleveland. So that was
Cleveland week 12 or 13?
14.
14.
14.
Okay.
So I think it was Huntley and whoever their other backup was. The only reason I didn't put Mark Andrews in there was just because he wasn't he was absolute monster as far as the tight end goes. But he just wasn't a guy who I felt like everyone had a chance to pick up before the playoffs started. I mean, you would have had to give something nice to get Mark Andrews to make the playoff push. That was the only reason I left him off. But Mark Andrews definitely had a great second half of the year. I also considered, I mean, obviously below Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I considered Josh Jacobs as someone who I thought had a solid playoff. I mean, they aren't numbers that like come out to you. I mean, week 13, 24, then 10, 12, 11, and 18. But if you look at some of the bigger name guys who were getting you 5 points, 4 points, 3 points in that stretch, he outperformed them. And I felt like just like to have a guy who before the playoffs began was kind of just like you could pick up Josh. You could get Josh Jacobs for a low end wide receiver. I felt like he just kind of might have been able to save some people with a nice solid floor going through the playoffs. So I kind of want to give him a little bit of love.
And another guy that I think deserves to be in the conversation, especially if it's just the most valuable player of the fantasy playoffs, also is in the winner of our most valuable player for the full season is Cooper Cup. Cooper Cup's been putting up monster numbers in the playoffs. Through weeks 14, if we want to go to 14, if you want to like do the lead in to the playoffs and like start at 14 or 13, 26.9, 31.3, and then the last 3 weeks, 35, 21, 21. So like Cooper Cup just continuing to do what he does and just be dominant.
Absolutely. Braxton Berrios, Cooper Cup-esque.
Braxton Berrios, I tweeted after I've gotten a lot of things wrong throughout the season, but getting Braxton Berrios right last week is something that I will take with me to my grave.
As you should.
Maybe even beyond, if you believe in that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Next award.
That's something we could talk about on Saturday when we talk about all the good stuff, religion, politics, everything that you're not supposed to talk about.
Which is fine because we won't be on Saturday.
Exactly. So that's why I said it. I'll be on Saturday on air. All right. Biggest bust, Kondo, through the whole season.
I'm sticking with my midway pick. And you didn't like it because it was because of injury. I don't think it really matters, to be honest, because it still was a decision that probably lost a lot of people the league, and that's going to be Christian McCaffrey. I love Christian McCaffrey. I think that coming up in this mock draft, I have a feeling I will be taking him with one of my picks because I will have him higher than most people do. But he was a bust this year. Like in fantasy football, as far as fantasy football is concerned, I get that it's because he didn't play, but you're taking a guy at the number 1 pick overall. Like that's a huge, as big of an investment as you can make into a player in a redraft. And I mean, he had some great weeks, but like for him to not deliver, like for the expectation coming into the season that like he has the potential to get hurt, and for a lot of people to overlook that and to go down not only once but twice and miss half of the year, over half of the year is like it's almost a I should have known better feeling. And to come back from that, like not only did you miss out on your number 1 pick, but you also didn't get another pick until late in the second round. Like it also hurt you in that way as well, because it's not like if you're picking at the back end of the first round and you took a guy like Saquon, but you also got Austin Eckler or something like that. Or you took a guy like Saquon, but you also got like Jonathan Taylor or something like at the back end where you can kind of, or Joe Mixon, like you can fix it a little bit. The damage control, obviously, there's not as many options at the back end of that second round to fix the issue that was Christian McCaffrey being out for the full season. And it's not like Chuba Hubbard was good in his place when he came in as the handcuff, at least not to the level that like a Mike Davis was last year in some games. And yeah, like I think that's just really tough to come back from, especially with the draft capital involved.
So I see where you're coming from with CMC, but I'm going to go with the guy that you briefly mentioned in Saquon Barkley. So if you look at the rankings and full point leagues, CMC missing most of the year, finished as the 31st best running back on the season. Chuba Hubbard finished at 39th. Saquon Barkley comes in at 32, playing all games but 5. And I mean, one was a bye week. I think the bust for me has to go to Saquon because CMC was hurt. There was no chance you're starting him. You took him out the lineup. You made repairs. You did what you had to do. Saquon Barkley was in there. He had, 2 games, week 3 and 4, where it looked like Saquon. Then Dallas, obviously happened. He goes out, comes back after the bye week against Tampa, and you put him in there, get you 11 points. You're like, all right, good. But then you keep him in there. Playoffs come around. Week 15, got Saquon in there, get you less than 10. Oh, all right, you're going to Philly, get you less than 4. Playing Chicago, get you 10.2. For me, it has to be Saquon just because you put Saquon out there instead of cutting the ties, dropping trowel, and just moving on like you could do with CMC. But you kept Saquon along for the entire season, and that could have cost you more because Chuba Hubbard wasn't great. I talked so much garbage about Chuba Hubbard, but at least it was Chuba Hubbard's show. And it was like, here he is. This is who we have. We're not going to really change it. We're not going to be doing anything. He's not going to be splitting reps with anyone. He's not going to be splitting reps with the starter of Saquon Barkley. So I think that's why Saquon for me is my biggest bust because he played, most of the season minus those 4 games, but he cost you leagues. I mean, you could have kept CMC in there, and CMC would have statistically have gotten you more points throughout the whole season than Saquon Barkley did. So for me, that's why Saquon is the bust, just because you could have, with CMC, you could have, got someone better. Could have traded him away, could just dropped him, done whatever. With Saquon, you had left him out there the entire time. And you could have picked up, a Deontay Foreman, a Williams, a Duke Johnson. You could have picked up a bunch of different people who just were doing better later on in the season.
Sure. No, I think that's one that I can't question. It's just a different way of looking at it. And I think that is very fair. Another guy that I would throw into that conversation is a guy that I hate to throw into that conversation, and that's Miles Sanders. I think similarly to Saquon, maybe more so not related to the name, but related to just what we saw on the field. His production was pretty good throughout the year, and he just didn't get in the end zone or he got hurt. And he had speaking about a guy who had a ton of injuries this year, he only missed 4 games so far. He left a few games early and just never got in the end zone. So you're always putting him out there because he looks good when he's on the field, but just could never really capitalize on it outside of 2-3 weeks. And then 1 week he got you 10.1 in full point PPR when he had 5 receptions. So I don't even know if that's actually a great week. It's kind of a bad week in non-PPR formats.
Yeah, Miles Sanders definitely up there, but I think I left him off the bus just because I thought Saquon went early. Some people picked him up as early as the 5th pick. I mean, obviously CMC was almost a unanimous. I mean, except I was in a league where people picked up Patty Mahomes first, in a league where people picked up Dalvin first, picked Derrick Henry. But CMC was always in the top 3 at least. Saquon was by and large a top 7 pick. So that's for me. That's why I had to put him in there. Miles Sanders, though, I agree with you. I mean, you brought him out there because he has the potential, but he had 0 touchdowns on the year, and that, he had a good year for no touchdowns. I'll be honest. He had a good year for no touchdowns, but you don't want a guy out there who you're trying to justify the fact he doesn't have a touchdown. You want a guy out there who you're justifying having 3 touchdowns week in and week out. You're it's Cooper Kupp. He can do it. That's the problem you want to have.
Yeah. I also think a lot of receivers could be in this mix as well. Allen Robinson, was at definitely a top 15 wide receiver coming into the year. I know Julio was going in the top 20 of wide receivers.
Mhm.
So some pretty big disappointments there as well. But the running back position is probably just
Yeah.
more of the important area.
Running yeah. Running backs don't have to rely on the quarterback. Um, Wide receivers, tight ends have to rely on the quarterback to give them the ball, quite literally. Um, Running backs just need to be able to like body a handoff. That's it. So for me, running backs have to bolster more of the problem, like
It's
the
just more one of the more important fantasy positions too.
very important for fantasy.
What's next on the docket?
Most underrated, undervalued, underrated, however you would like to look at it.
I feel like this should be a pretty unanimous one as well. We might have the same answer here.
Mine is a running back, so maybe
Okay, mine is a wide receiver.
okay. I'd love to hear yours because I probably agree. I just have different reason for mine.
Yeah, I mean, guy that you were on very early. I was also on very early.
Is it Mr.
Um,
Number 11?
it's not Mr. Number 11.
Oh,
Um,
overall. Number 13.
oh, yes, number
11.
11 overall. Number
Yes,
13
he's number
on the
2.
field. Hunter Renfro
Yep,
is,
absolutely.
I mean, he's been a wide receiver one. He like down the,
Quite
I
literally,
think that's the crazy thing is everybody
Right.
coming into the season, like even us, we were like, oh, he's like a good safe floor guy, like Sterling
Right.
Shepard, great flex,
Mhm.
and you just kind of slowly go up the ranks throughout the season where you're like,
Mhm.
it's a good flex, it's a good guy to have on your bench, it's a good flex, it's a good wide
Right.
receiver too. To the point, I think week, I don't know, like 12, like around late in the season, we were saying, yeah, like he's a wide receiver one. Like he's
Yeah.
as safe as an option at wide receiver as there is out there.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think in our main league, I would say that he's one of the big reasons that the person who won. So Hunter Renfro has really like probably propelled himself into being one of the top. I mean, not in that first row of wide receivers taken,
No.
but I'll be interested to see where he goes next year in fantasy drafts because definitely someone that is going from probably undrafted
Mhm.
to now certainly a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy
Right.
football next year.
Hunter Renfro was my number 2. Loved him early on. Still love him. Very solid floor guy. He had, 3 games in double digits. One of them happened to be the first round of the playoffs, which doesn't help. But Hunter Renfro was so solid throughout the entire year. Absolutely loved him. A great wide receiver too for anyone who, needed one. My guy is quite literally my guy. Absolutely love the man. He's underrated through the season for playoffs. He was a complete bust for the playoffs, as we might talk about later. But it was Cordell Patterson. Throughout the regular season, Cordell Patterson propelled himself to the number 8 running back. Going from undrafted, just like Hunter Renfro, to go to like he was number 1 or he wasn't number 1, but he was like number 2, 3 a couple of times throughout the season. Just bolstering great weeks. So Cordell Patterson was my most underrated player throughout the whole season. Hunter Renfro was close. Hunter Renfro carried over to the playoffs, whereas Cordell Patterson, they did not. San Francisco, Detroit, Buffalo apparently are just too tough to handle. Lost some people their leagues with Cordell Patterson. Thank God I won.
Do you think the only like argument that I think people could say for Hunter Renfro over Cordell Patterson is like I think people caught on to Cordell Patterson throughout the year.
Mhm.
Like I feel like eventually we're like, okay, this is a running back one.
Right.
Where I think Hunter Renfro, even now, people kind of put him in the wide receiver 2 mix. where he's been performing like a wide receiver one. I think that's like I agree that Cordell Patterson has been underrated, but like I think people started jumping on the boat where Hunter Renfrow. I think next year he may go lower than where he should.
Hunter, I think both are going to go low next year, lower than where I think they're going to finish.
Is Cordell Patterson even going to be an Atlanta Falcon next year?
Wherever he is going to be, he is going to have a great year just because he doesn't need all that many touches as he showed throughout the entire year. I think the problem with Cordell Patterson is that, yes, people who like looked at the numbers would see like this guy's a legit RB1. He's killing it out here. But
Besides
I mean, yeah, but you can't trade during the playoffs. But you would never get a fair offer for Cordell Patterson, whereas with Hunter Renfrow, I felt like there were some offers that were, a viable wide receiver too. Like people were doing OBJ for Hunter Renfrow. That I think is fair because OBJ, did kind of revive himself, like I kind of predicted, and
I mean, you did say he was going to be a wide receiver one.
I did. Hey, I was close, really close. I can't help it. Cooper Kupp didn't, get injured to really boast right here. But I mean, OBJ, Green Bay 19, Jacksonville 10, Arizona 19, Seattle terrible game of 1.7, Minnesota 13, Baltimore 14. I mean, those numbers are comparable to Hunter Renfrow, and
I don't know about that.
Besides the 1.7?
I mean, Hunter Renfrow put up, wasn't he in like the 20s in some playoffs? Like he had 28.7, 6.2, 13, 20.6. So he had 2 20-point weeks.
He had 2 20-point leagues. But I'm talking about like trading OBJ for Hunter Renfrow. Like if you said that at the beginning of the season, people would have been like crazy. OBJ's OBJ.
Right.
But Hunter Renfrow like kind of proved him wrong, and you were able to do trades like this. Whereas Cordell Patterson, you were getting offers for like Le'Veon Bell.
Well, I think
you were getting like really
at the beginning of the season. I agree with you. I guess my argument was by the end of the year, like trade deadline time, I think Cordell Patterson was getting a lot more respect on his name than Hunter Renfrow was.
I had more luck with
just my opinion.
I just had more luck trading Hunter Renfrow away for like wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1 than I did have luck moving Cordell Patterson for another, mid to back end running back 1. So I just had more luck with him. So that's why I said Cordell Patterson was the guy I felt was more underrated by the general community.
Gotcha. Next award.
Let me look here. I mean, rookie of the year is unanimous. It's Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. And we have the ones we don't. These are the 3 that are left on the paper that we kind of had. It was most likely to fall off in second half.
Wait, we don't have to do that one anymore.
But you don't have to do that one. Most poised for second half breakout.
The second half already happened. So
second half did happen.
Oh,
and then the last one is most overrated.
I mean, we could probably do most overrated. It's a mean award. So I personally don't love doing the mean awards of like the busts and stuff like that. But like,
I feel like it's helpful to people. Like you have to know who, like if they disappoint 2 years in a row, and there seems to be a trend. Like people need to know. It's for good fantasy viable information.
Who had the most overrated season? It's an interesting question.
Who had a bad season but is overrated.
Yes.
And people assumed it was a good one.
I mean, we can talk about somebody that I like. I don't like to talk about in this category, but I've kind of been saying it for a while. As far as fantasy production and consistency, I think Lamar Jackson could be in that conversation. Lamar had 4 weeks over 20 points. He had two in the 19s, but like I don't think I think there was a time and place where people were saying Lamar was the top quarterback in fantasy football when it was like, whoa, like
Right.
Tom Brady's putting up 20 more consistently. Jalen Hurts is putting up 20 more consistently at the time. Josh Allen's still Josh Allen. You would get like Patrick Mahomes was having like a little bit less consistency, but like not that much. Like, and Patrick Mahomes, like people were talking about him having a awful year. Like, I don't, I didn't get the hype with like people crowning Lamar as like one of the top fantasy quarterbacks to have.
Mhm.
I guess like some of that fell off obviously when he got hurt, but he
Right.
was one of the more inconsistent guys at the position and not getting you like 20 points on a weekly basis, which I feel like is what you're looking for out of your quarterback position.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Lamar, he's weird. I mean, he goes 18, 32, 19, 19, 42 basically, down to 12, 23 bye week, 30, 15, doesn't play Chicago, plays bad in Cleveland, plays, decent for 17, then Pittsburgh, then gets hurt again in Cleveland. So that one not going to hold against him. So yeah, he has been pretty inconsistent. I agree with you. He's a little overrated because he's not.
I just think the expectation was so high. Like Lamar
Yeah,
can be, I would say Lamar is like you're starting him every week, but I would not say that he was ever a guy that I was ranking as the number one overall quarterback on a week, which is where I saw his name fairly frequently.
yeah. I think the hype around Lamar, it's crazy because he plays quarterback and running back for this organization at the same time. Um, I'm going through right now just to be sure before I say this, but Lamar has 200-yard rushing games. Every running back combined that had played and is still on the roster for Baltimore, none of them have one on the season. So I think it's where the potential for Lamar comes from. I think that's why he is overrated. Is because
I think he was this year. I'm not going to say that he like is overrated. I think it's just like this year the expectations were too high.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the average for everyone. Patty would technically be overrated. He was the fourth overall quarterback on the season. He averaged 3 points less than Josh Allen. You got Josh Allen way later, I think like a round or two later. Justin Herbert averaged about a point and a half less than Josh Allen, coming at number two. Justin Herbert, people picked up very late.
I guess I'm looking at it more as
Yeah.
like people now saying that they had a decent fantasy season when I don't think they actually did. Not like expectations coming into the year versus
Oh, okay. Okay.
how they are now. Like I think another player that we both agree on and have talked pretty consistently about our agreement on that is Amari Cooper. Like
Yep.
Amari Cooper's had a solid last couple of weeks. He had 21 and then he had 10, but he's still wide receiver 28 on the year. Like he was drafted. Some people were deciding between him and CeeDee Lamb who to rank higher,
Yep.
which is crazy to think about now. And I mean, he's lower than where I had him coming into the year. I think I still had him in my top 20. And I think the expectation for like Amari Cooper is still, I mean, you're probably throwing him out in your lineups now because of the last 2 weeks, but like it's you know that potential is there to have a dud, like a serious dud week whenever you have Amari Cooper. I think the same might be able to be said with like how Terry's been playing. So
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, a lot of wide receivers were really tough to kind of deal with this year. I mean, almost everyone but Cooper, maybe Hill. I mean, Hill had not even Hill. Hill kind of fumbled the bag a little bit. So I think it's just Cooper and Devontae this year were the only two real wide receivers who, week in, week out, did not lose you a week based off their performance. So a lot of wide receivers, but I'm with you, Amari Cooper, definitely overrated. More so this year than normal. He still finished miraculously high, wide receiver 28. So starting in 14-team leagues and flex consideration for 12-team and 10-team. So I'm with you. Season was a little weird. Scary Terry was kind of a guy I had in mind, but his name's Scary Terry, so I was like, kind of fits the profile, you know.
I have a question for you. Who are you most excited to see in 2022? Like, who do you think could take a massive leap in 2022?
I think I kind of want to say Hunter Renfrow. Like, I really just kind of want to double down on him. I mean, he finished as wide receiver 12, 11, whatever. Top starting wide receiver for you. But that was with so much like adversity and team dysphoria over there with the head coach going down, your wide receiver buddy, who was kind of the number one for the team, leaving, Darren Waller going down. So I'm kind of interested to see how Hunter Renfrow takes a leap forward if he can. Darren Waller obviously will be back, have a year or an off season to kind of train with the head coach, figure out the game plan going forward. So he's a guy I'm looking forward to seeing how he does next year.
I think there's so many storylines for next season, whether that be like if you want to go with running backs. There's obviously an expectation that Melvin Gordon is going to leave in Denver. How does that set up for Javonte Williams? What their quarterback situation going to be like next year? That whole team, really, right. There's a lot of questions around.
Right.
What are the Cowboys going to do with Zeke? Like, is he going to be back for another year? Are they going to really hand the reins to Pollard?
Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, a lot of these guys are on, could be going to another home. I mean, Cleveland could be moving their quarterback situation away from Baker after the poorest year he had. So, I mean, there's a lot of
Amon-Ra St. Brown, like his late season push, like what does that mean for next year? I think even some like receivers that are in their first year this year, or that like Elijah Moore, like how is he going to come back? How is Devontae Smith going to grow in year two? Like there's a lot of things to be excited about going into next year. I think another one is like tight end position, Pat Freiermuth. Like we don't know who's going to be the quarterback in Pittsburgh, but he seems to have carved out a pretty big role for himself in that passing game. So there's a lot of interesting things to be excited about, but we have a lot of time to figure that out. Next thing that we want to do, the last thing that we want to do on this show is our fantasy draft. We want to do an early fantasy draft for next season. I will defer to you, Tony. Do you want first pick or do you want second, third? Like, you know how it goes.
I would take second and third.
All right.
I will let you start us off.
I think second, third is probably like the right choice. Do we want to go? I guess it depends how long we want to talk about each pick. But I'm going to go with Derrick Henry, number one overall. Like, it's between.
That was not where I thought you were going, so this is going to really throw me off.
It's between JT and Derrick Henry for me.
Okay.
I just feel a little bit better about like the Derrick Henry volume because
Right.
his volume in comparison to everyone else's volume is just insane. So that's really what pushes it over the edge for me at number one with him. But I do think it's going to be a decision. Like, are those the two guys that you would be between at number one? Or do you think there is a clear cut number one?
I don't know if there is going to be a clear cut number one after this year. I mean, Dalvin, CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, all four of these guys are the clear cut workhorse for the team. Dalvin, I feel like actually is going to be taking a bump down away from those other three because Dalvin does have JJ, Adam Thielen, Tyler Conklin, Irv Smith when he comes back. He has some guys to help alleviate some of the touches that he needs to have and, alleviate some of the defensive pressure. But at the same time, they're going to take away touches from him, whereas Derrick Henry is going to get the most of the work. Jonathan Taylor is going to get a lot of the work. CMC is the entire team over there. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I am going to put Jonathan Taylor at number 2. The Colts, as much as it pains me to say it, they got a good young guy here, Jonathan Taylor.
It shouldn't cause you pain to say that.
Well, I had to put him above Dalvin Cook. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's painful. I know it's painful. I don't know if these numbers are correct here, but it says 317 attempts, 1,734 yards. I don't know if that's true or not. It could be a typo. But looking back on the season that the guy had, he really utilized the fact that the team was not all there. I mean, Michael Pittman, nice young guy, but if we're going to be honest, is Michael Pittman comparable to JJ? No.
Not yet.
Is he comparable to DJ Moore? No. So, I mean, you really had no one, like no other real pressures there. I mean, I thought Zach Pascal was going to be a little bit something. 66 overall wide receiver was what he turned out to be. Mo Alley Cox was 32nd tight end. Jack Doyle was 25th. So tight end position wasn't really helping him. So Jonathan Taylor kind of has to work to himself. I mean, and he utilized it to like the fullest extent. I mean, he averaged over 20 yards or 20 points a game. Like he really carried people to a win this year. So Jonathan Taylor, I think, has to go number 2. If I get an early pick, it's going to be a tough one between Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor next year. And my third guy, I think this is going to be a little bit of a surprise to you, kind of. Okay. My little Cooper Kupp, number 3.
Interesting. That is a surprise.
I thought so. But looking at it, he was the only player to average over 25 points a game. Josh Allen is a quarterback, as many of us know. Josh Allen was the number 1 scoring quarterback, as a lot of us know. Most times, quarterbacks are the highest scoring positions on the field for fantasy football. Cooper Kupp had 412.9 points. Josh Allen had 378.72. He had like 30 plus more points than Josh Allen did, who normally quarterbacks are like head and shoulders above other people. So the fact that he was able to do that, like he needs to be considered very early on in this draft because he single-handedly could have carried your team. Like you had a down week because of you put Kamara in. Kamara got you 4 points. Cooper Kupp could have bolstered you up to a nice week for you. So Cooper Kupp, I think, has to go. I think he has to go behind Jonathan Taylor just because I think the running back position is so needy. But he has to be up there, and I'm going to pick him up number 3 overall.
Yeah, that leaves me. I think that there are 4 running backs that are kind of in the second tier of running back, and I have to take two of them because I don't think that you're taking Kelsey. I guess this is more of our top 24 like players in the draft than a mock draft because there's not going to be many drafts where you're drafting against one other player.
Exactly.
And I think that there's four running backs that would come up next on that list. And it's interesting because there's one of them that I honestly would take later than these other guys as far as the talent that the one person has in the offense. But I also think they might have the best handcuff. So that's kind of the question mark that I'm going through right now.
Mhm.
And I think I'm going to go with it because he's in the best offense as well.
So you're gonna go Dalvin Cook.
I'm going to go Dalvin. He's in the second best offense. I'm going to go Dalvin at 4. I don't really like how this is looking for me right now, but I'm going to
Derrick
trust.
Henry and Dalvin Cook. I like it. I mean, I think it's a nice one.
I'm going to trust in the offenses as far as like the rankings. I really do think that that's a huge part of what makes a running back relevant. For instance, a guy who is not going to be in my top at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs. Zeke Elliott.
Thank you.
Zeke hasn't been good in a long time, and he just scores touchdowns. And he's a top. Where is he at running back this year? He's at
Not running back. He was, I think, right.
He's number 6 running back on the year.
No, 7. Right above Patterson.
I see him at 6.
Oh, yep. Sorry, James Conner somehow got put above him. That's weird.
But I'm going Dalvin at 4, and then 5 again, going with trusting the offenses, and it really pains me to pass on 2 guys that I think could very well be better. And I expect these rankings to change probably throughout the year. But I'm going to go Austin Eckler. Like, I don't think it's a premier belief in Austin Eckler versus the 2 guys that I left off the board, but I think it's a belief in the Chargers offense, which has been up and down this year, but has certainly been better than the 2 other big name running backs that are still on the board.
Well, I was hoping to have Eckler fall to me. But I like it. I do think Austin Eckler on a great offense, great young core.
And he scores a lot of touchdowns. Like, that was the big worry coming into this year. Is he
Austin Eckler? I mean, he only has 11. I mean, let's not overhype the poor guy. I mean, come on. He missed a week, so no, he did do really good. He was very consistent, number 2 overall in terms of running backs this year. I like it. I like the pick. Running. That was a nice pick. I like it from you.
Thank you.
It's kind of hurts me a little bit. I'm going to pick up both these guys.
I have a feeling I know
both running backs. Actually, I don't think you okay.
One's got to be Kamara.
It is not Kamara.
Interesting.
It's
I think
CMC.
Kamara was the biggest competition for those guys.
I have 2 above him, and one of them actually outperformed Kamara this year. 2.
Sure.
I'm going to go CMC first. Keep it in suspense for a second here. I think CMC comes back healthy.
I don't think there's too much suspense. I think I do know who it's going to be if it's not.
It's not Zeke either.
I know it's not Zeke.
Oh, thank God. Okay. CMC, I'm going to go with him just because I think, like I said earlier, the offense goes through CMC if he is healthy. He's a huge boost to your team. And obviously, it always helps to have the guy who has the potential to be the number 1 player in fantasy football on your team. The next guy I'm going with is Najee Harris. your true love. Najee Harris, he kind of stumbled in the playoffs. I'll be 100% honest. 4 points, 16, but he kind of
Good week
recapped it
last
this
week.
weekend. What?
Good week last, or good night last night.
Yeah, last night he had a great game. If you were able to hold on for the 4.6 week, which unless you had the bye week, kind of hurt you. But throughout the whole season, I mean, besides Cincinnati week 12, the man was like a walking, 16-point, guarantee for you.
Are you worried at all about, like, we don't know who's going to be the quarterback?
Nope, not worried in the slightest, because Big Ben has the knowledge. Like I kind of said earlier on in the year, I said Big Ben has the knowledge of being a great quarterback. And Mason Rudolph has the mobility. And
I really hope the answer isn't Mason Rudolph. And I don't think I'm alone in that conversation.
If the choice is between an immobile Big Ben, who we saw struggle, and Mason Rudolph, I'm going to go Mason Rudolph because Mason Rudolph has better numbers and he has the ability to move on the ground.
He doesn't have better numbers. That can't be true.
Big Ben had a QBR of like negative 1,000 last night. Like it was unreal.
What do you
how
mean?
bad
He wasn't that bad.
Big Ben, I think's QBR was like 14 last night.
We're also talking about Ben Roethlisberger. Like you're talking about Big Ben now. I want to make clear you're not talking about Big Ben overall versus.
I'm talking about Big Ben on the team right now, going out to suit up on Sundays, Thursdays, and Mondays.
Well, I think the choice number one would be Big Ben, because the Steelers, who I think we both can admit, probably smarter than us, are choosing to start Big Ben. Like that's why I would say that Big Ben would be the choice over Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, I just want to know one play that Mason Rudolph has made that's like a good play that like you think back to. Because the only thing that I think of, and Mason Rudolph might be good, but like the only thing I think many people think of when they think of Mason Rudolph is him just getting hit in the head with a helmet. And like I feel like if you're a good quarterback, or if like all these guys are good, but if you are a guy who can, I don't know, propel the Steelers to winning seasons and really be like the long-term answer, you would probably have a moment that would surpass that, where you make like a big play or something and you're not remembered just for being hit in the head with a helmet.
So I mean, everyone knows about the helmet hit. It's just kind of going to follow him forever. Should also follow Myles Garrett, who
coincidentally. But Myles Garrett, like that's the thing. It follows Myles Garrett, but it's not the first thing that you like typically think of, because he's such like an awesome player. That's what worries me.
He gets the opportunity to play.
He got the opportunity, and they tied the Lions.
Lions were what, 10? At one point, they were like 10-3 against the spread. Like they were a good team. They're good at keeping the game close. They used the most of what they got. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is about Mason Rudolph here. Mason Rudolph offers more with his legs than Big Ben can ever hope to. Mason Rudolph went 1 for 17 one game. One rush, 17 yards. Another game, he went 4 rushes, 46 yards. Big Ben, 1 rush, -5 yards. 3 rushes, 0 yards. So the mobility that comes in with Mason Rudolph, if that is the choice they go, their numbers are, their completion percentage is close to identical. But the fact that Mason Rudolph can also offer a little bit with his legs, I think that bolsters Najee Harris up a little bit, just because now you have to worry about Mason Rudolph, tucking the ball and running it himself for a couple yards. Whereas you don't have to ever worry about that with Big Ben. And still Najee Harris was able to bolster himself to 18 fantasy points a week, number 4 running back overall. And I think that's being his rookie year. I'm hoping he doesn't plateau and, have that sophomore slump like some guys do, but I'm assuming he won't, just because we've seen running backs in the Pittsburgh offense just have success there. Like James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, really anyone that they put in that backfield seems to have RB1 fantasy numbers.
Yeah, I have no worries about Najee. It's just more the situation with him. Um, he would probably be. He's going to be probably lower next year than he was for me this year. Which is just a
Najee
little bit weird.
he went early. He went 4 or 5 in our draft, correct?
I don't think so. He went.
See, it was CMC
13th overall.
He went 13th.
13th overall. I don't know where he went for running backs. Like he was ranked outside, I believe, of the top. He was definitely out of the top 10 running backs by ADP. I want to say he was like 13 or 12.
Maybe.
I had him as my number 5 guy, 6 guy, number 6 running back. I don't think he's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be in the top 6 this year.
Well, he's number 7 on our draft, so obviously you're right about that.
He's the number 6 running back for ours. I think that Alvin Kamara, who I'm going to take as the 8th player in this, is somebody that I would put ahead of him because it doesn't really matter. Like he just keeps putting up numbers. Like he just keeps performing, keeps scoring touchdowns. I think that's the thing that worried me with where this offense was is he going to be able to score touchdowns consistently? And he's been able to do that. So like I still feel very good about Kamara, and I think that's going to be one of the things like going into next year, looking at this, I can get Alvin Kamara at number 8 in my draft next year. That's awesome. 9 is a little bit tougher. I think that's where Travis Kelce starts to come into play.
You're picking up Kelce?
I don't know. There's a couple of running backs that I am still considering. I think you could consider Devontae at this point as well.
I mean, the running backs left. I mean, you have Nick Chubb, you have Aaron Jones, you have Elliott, you have Patterson,
Joe Mixon.
I
think David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift could even be in the question here. DeAndre
you have
Swift.
Saquon Barkley. I mean, you have some big names still on the board.
For me, it's between Chubb and Kelce. And I think like another guy that could be in this mix as well is Javonte Williams.
He had a good year.
You know what? Give me Kelce. I'm gonna
talk yourself into it. Okay.
I'm gonna be a little ambitious here. I thought I could go chalk, or I could be spontaneous and everything that I'd ever want to be, that I'm typically not. And I said, you know what? This mock draft might be the time to do it.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I kind of assumed you're going to go Travis Kelce here just because I felt like you weren't going to wait and hope he fell at 12.
Would he have fell at 12?
That's
what we're about to find out.
Well, I'm picking up Davante Adams at number 10 since you kind of mentioned him. I just know how you think, and you might accidentally pick him up and steal him from me. So I'm going to go Davante Adams. He was the next best in terms of consistency for the wide receiver position. Him and Cooper Kupp were pretty consistent all year round, not going below double digits. Aaron Rodgers has an interesting stat that since week 1, he has thrown like 15.5 touchdowns to every interception that he's thrown. And the next best, I think, was like 2 or 3. Carson Wentz and Kirk Cousins were on the list, obviously, because they're both accurate. But Aaron Rodgers is very
comparable to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, comparable, just like we are, because we had.
No, we haven't had.
Well, I mean, in week 1, we had just about as many passing yards as, Aaron Rodgers did. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go Davante Adams, number 10. I think Davante, this is around the time where people should try to pick him up. If you're going to pick up Kelce, I feel like you should try to pick up Devontae Adams. And
I just think there's a bigger drop off for tight end.
there is a big one. And I'm going to pick up one at number 11.
You think? Remember, this is like it's not. We're not building our teams.
I know this isn't you and me, but I'm just saying.
This is like your rankings. So
Right.
you have like a tight end at 11 overall.
I have 2, Kelsey and Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had 138 targets on the year. 138 targets at the tight end position. Had the best playoff burst of anyone. Mark Andrews needs to be picked up early and often. And I think George Kittle, Hawkinson, Gronk, Waller, I think there is now a new line. I think there is now Andrews and Kelsey, line, Kittle, Gronk, Waller, Hawkinson, line, all the others. Just based off the fact that George Kittle, 87 targets. Gronk, 79 targets. Waller, 84 targets. Hawkinson, 83 targets. Kelsey, 129. Mark Andrews had 138 targets on the year. There is no running back to compete with him. It's Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson. Those are the 3 players on the team. And if you can get yourself a piece of the tight end puzzle that early, I think you take it, because I think he had more targets than Kelsey, and Kelsey went before him just because Kelsey has some of the upside with Tyreek. And I think it's comparable, if not more so, to Mark Andrews. So I am picking him up.
I do think they're like in a tier of their own, like you said. I do want to say though that like Kittle did miss time as far as the target discussion goes. Kittle missed time, Gronk missed time, Waller missed time. Obviously, like there's some guys that missed time there as far as the targets go, but I do think obviously Mark Andrews is as big a part of his offense as anybody. So I can't like hate on the pick. I do think I would have taken personally Nick Chubb, and that's why I'm going to have him as our 12th best guy. Nick Chubb.
I'm a little concerned about the quarterback situation and what they're going to do as a team.
I feel
there seems to be some team issues in Cleveland, not like organizational wise, not so much. Nick Chubb's a great player. I mean, I considered him, but
I just think that like he's a kind of overcome as bad as it gets. I mean, he's dealt with injuries this year as well.
Right.
And he just continues to like put up. Now, obviously, it's been a little bit more boom bust this year, but like he's still having monster games, like 27-point games, 30-point games. He's had a little bit more down games just because of they have a quarterback who's broken now. I think like people said that for Carson Wentz last year. I think you could say that for Baker this year. Physically, like is having a ton of things going on. And I don't feel like comfortable too much commenting on like mental, but like I'm sure he's not in the best state. Like he's not having a great year. I'm sure like that has to affect your confidence a bit, but like I don't see it getting much worse. Maybe that's foolish of me, but you're talking like back into the first round. I think the upside for Nick Chubb, who, if he plays the whole season behind an offensive line that I think is still like when healthy, very good, one of the best in the league, he could easily be a top 5 running back next year. Then it gets interesting. Do you want to go?
So I just have something to say about Nick Chubb. The reason besides Mark Andrews just being a beast, I didn't go Nick Chubb here because through the first 5 weeks, he and Kareem Hunt were both healthy.
But he was still a top 10 running back.
Right. But Kareem Hunt outperformed him, I believe, 4 out of the 5. I think Houston was the one game that Nick Chubb did better I'm trying to check the stats. Oh, so it was week 1 and 2. Kansas City and Houston were the only 2 games that Nick Chubb did better than Kareem for the first stretch here. And so that's just why when Kareem Hunt's there, it's there's a double-headed dragon back there, and it's great for them. They're both fantastic runners. But Kareem Hunt, does eat into Nick Chubb a little bit.
I agree.
Kind of like that's why I'm just more hesitant about it. But hey, you don't have OBJ anymore. You have DPJ and Jarvis and like 18 tight ends. So
I think he eats in, and that's what keeps him out of the Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, like Austin Eckler, Dalvin territory.
Mhm.
But like, if we go through his touches those first 5 weeks, 17 touches, 12, 22, 22, 22. Like he was still getting a ton, as many touches as anybody else, and still only had 1 single-digit week and 2 20-point weeks. Like, so it didn't really hurt his production as much as even I expected coming into the year. Like I was hesitant about that as well. So like, that kind of like enforced to me that I'm not going to doubt Nick Chubb again. I think it gets interesting at 13. That's when could look wide receiver 3, like who's going to be the third wide receiver on the board. Do you want to go running back? And like at running back, it kind of gets interesting. Like there's no more obvious choices. Cordero Patterson's still on the board. You still have David Montgomery, who I think he's running back 20 on the year. I think that he is going to be a lot more valuable than that. You have Aaron Jones. You have the guy I think I'm going to take here, and that's probably going to be DeAndre Swift. I don't feel great about it, but I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that DeAndre Swift, you kind of saw, again, kind of like Nick Chubb in a little bit of a different way. I think you've seen the worst of situations. I don't think that Detroit goes backwards from here. It's going to be kind of hard with how their record sets up and like just the amount of talent that that team had this year and what they've been able to overcome as far as that's concerned, just by like playing really well together. I think that they are going to continue to be a better team and a more productive offense, and that only sets up better for Swift, who, when he was healthy, was a top 10 running back this year, and having some like monster weeks and a lot of pass catching as well, which really helps in PPR formats.
I can't hate on Swift too much. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Swift is like in a weird category, like Mixon. Mixon like didn't win you a week. He might have won you 1 or 2, but he didn't lose you a week. And I feel like that's kind of where
Mixon had that stretch where he was like scoring 2 touchdowns every game.
Yeah, I mean he kind of started off 25, 8, 10, 13, 10, 26, 11, 25, 28, 24, 32, 9, 8, 7, 31, 15 last week. So he's an interesting guy because it's hard to read on a Joe Mixon. That's kind of where I put him. I kind of put him in the same category as Swift. I think I'm going to go. I think I have to go Aaron Jones. I think I do.
That's an interesting one. I'm actually excited to hear about this.
Aaron Jones has been sturdy. I mean, he has a couple weeks where, he gets you 8 points, 5 points, 2 points, but then he'll come back and get you 41 and a half. Like, I think Aaron Jones, he's in the same conversation as Swift, if not the tier above him in my mind, just because I think the offense is better in Green Bay. I think we can both agree
There's question marks about that though next year too.
There's question marks about it, but at the same time, there's been question marks about Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay for 38 and a half years, going on 54 at this point. So, I mean, it's always something going on. I'm making this list assuming Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay, with Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones being so high up there. Obviously, if we hear news in the offseason, list will change, but Aaron Jones finished as a top 10 running back this year. Aaron Jones also coincidentally, missed the game in Minnesota. He came back for the Rams. I don't think he should have. I think he should have stayed out another week. And he got you 2.3 points. So even with missing, I'm going to count it as missing 2 weeks just because that 2.3, I think, was idiotic to do in terms of longevity of your, stud running back. But anyway, missing 2 weeks, still finishing as a number 9 running back on the year. Hard to beat him. That's why I put him up there.
Fair enough. Who are you taking at 15?
I think I got to be the wide receiver man here. I think I have to do it. You seem to be going pretty hot and heavy on the running backs. I don't hate on it. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. There's no way Tyreek Hill does not bounce back. He finished as wide receiver 2 this year. Chip on his shoulder. He knows he's better than that. He knows, he has little man syndrome. He's only like 5'10". He has little man syndrome. He's going to come out swinging next year. He had 156 targets this year. 156. Cooper Kupp, monster year he's having. 184. Devontae Adams, monster year he's having. 162. Deebo Samuel, 115 missed time. Justin Jefferson, 160 with Adam Thielen out. Or Smith out. Dalvin out. Tyreek, I think, is going to come back with a vengeance next year. Hoping I get my hands on some pieces of Tyreek because I think it's going to be a good year. He finished as wide receiver 2, and people are saying this was a down year for him. Like, that's crazy. Like, wide receiver 2, and it was a bad year for Tyreek Hill. So give me some T Hill.
You're gonna be disappointed.
Is it Kamara? Oh wait, you already took him. Took him over Devontae Adams.
I have a decision to make between 16 and 17, although I know who both of the guys are gonna be. I always lean running back, so I'm gonna continue to do that here. I'm going to go Joe Mixon at 16. Say what you will, the man scores touchdowns and is on a good offense. Like, that's something that you want to be invested in, especially if it's middle of the second round. Like Joe Mixon, we are talking about a guy who, like we said, went on a streak of like 25-plus point games for 4 or 5 games in a row because he just got 2 touchdowns in a game. Like, they don't shy away from giving him the ball. He gets a ton of touches. I don't think he'll ever finish as – and he's running back 4 on the year. I don't know that he'll ever finish as the running back 1 just because I don't know that he has maybe even the offensive line in Cincinnati to be like that efficient on the ground. We've never really seen him be that efficient consistently. Never really seen Cincinnati be known for the offensive line while he was there either, though. So who knows? If that Cincinnati line comes together, I think he could be a top guy. But I'm not banking on that. I just think that he could have some monster weeks for you and still be fairly consistent because of the massive volume that he receives. And
yeah, I mean, I don't hate on the Joe Mixon pick. Finishes wide receiver or running back 3, 4, whatever on the year. That was with Derrick Henry out, playoff Lenny down, CMC down, Dalvin banged up, Chubb banged up, Kamara handicapped by quarterback position, Saquon banged up, Elliott banged up every single game. I don't think he'll finish as high as he did this year, next year, but I agree.
We have him as the running back 11.
Right. I mean, he's a great pick 16 coming off the board could be someone's first running back if you went Kelsey and then Mixon, or Mark Andrews or Devontae and then Mixon could be your running back one. I think there are worse running back ones to pick. It's just an interesting guy for me just because
Could be an awesome running back too, also.
Yes, if it's your running back two, I feel super great about it. I'm just looking at it because it's pick 16. So it's like,
if you get Kamara and like Joe Mixon, though, like you're feeling awesome.
The way I have it right now would be Devontae Adams and Joe Mixon would be someone's team, and I don't hate on it because you're going to have a wide receiver 3 at worst. I mean, he finishes wide receiver 4 this year, and it was a down year. I mean, but if Aaron, all depends on Aaron Rodgers, thing. So I don't hate on it. I just think it's a little bit. I feel much more comfortable with Joe Mixon as my running back too.
Yeah, I don't know who else you're taking at running back other than him there. At receiver, the person that was in the conversation for 16 and the person who I said, like, I'm going to preemptively apologize. Justin Jefferson. I mean, the guy's just awesome. Gets a ton of targets. He's in an offense. Likes to throw the ball around like he's a huge part of that offense. Very consistent. I think that, like, him, Tyreek, are kind of that second wave of wide receivers. And I don't think, like, maybe you put Debo in there as well. But I think those two guys and the 4 guys that we took are pretty clearly the top 4 guys. I would have maybe even considered Tyreek over Justin Jefferson. I'm not sure that or Justin Jefferson over Tyreek, excuse me.
I thought about it.
I'm not sure that I would do that. I think I might stay but it's going to be very close next year. I wouldn't be surprised if those guys are back to back.
Right. I went Hill over JJ just because Thielen's coming back and I think Dalvin's going to be healthy. Whereas if CEH is healthy, great. Hope the best for everyone. Always. It's just that CEH is not Dalvin Cook by a long stretch of the imagination. And there is no wide receiver 2 in Kansas City.
Yeah, let's try to fly through these last, 6, 7 picks.
I have 4 more. I have 4 more picks. You have 3. So here we go. My 18th guy coming off the board is Saquon Barkley. Hoping he doesn't get injured. Hoping he comes back healthy. The whole wide receiver core over there is in shambles this year. Completely dysfunctional. Cooper Kupp, I think, had more receiving yards and touchdowns than their entire team. I don't think that happens next year. One, because I think Cooper Kupp regresses slightly, but also because I think that the wide receiver core gets healthy. So I'm going to go Saquon right there. I am going to pick up Josh Allen in 19 here.
The man just is that off.
Yeah, the man is the offense, and also based off how I have it here, it'd be Austin Eckler as your running back and Josh Allen as your quarterback. I think that getting 2 studs early on could be very helpful to your team. Josh Allen was the highest scoring guy in half-point leagues this year. He beat everyone else. Cooper Kupp only beat him because of the receptions that give you an insane amount of points. The offense goes through him. Quite literally, he is the quarterback after all. But also, he's not afraid to go on the ground. He doesn't do it to the extent he has later on the season, last 4 games. He has 12 rushing attempts in 3 of the last 4. But throughout the rest of the season, he never had a rushing attempt over 12 yards the entire season until week 14. So he doesn't really do it that often. It's kind of a ladder thing here. But Josh Allen, give it to me. I think this is a good time to start thinking about a quarterback is around this time.
Yeah, and there's really no one else you can think of outside of Josh Allen, I would say.
Right.
I might have a little bit of a curveball here. I think I'm going to go wide receiver first, though. um, and go Debo. I mean, I think Debo's just used very like there's no replacement value for Debo as far as that San Francisco offense goes. I don't think they could put anyone else in that role to do what he does. He's a very unique part of that offense that I think is just kind of irreplaceable. And fantasy wise has been kind of irreplaceable this year too. Wide receiver 3 on the year. Um, I do think that there are going to be people like Stephon Diggs that are going to make an argument. I think people are going to expect a big jump from Jamar Chase in year 2, even though he's the wide receiver 5 right now.
Right.
Deontay Johnson, I think, can be in the mix. AJ Brown, who is wide receiver 33, missed some time, but like hasn't had a great year. But I think a lot of people are going to expect him to rebound. But I'm going to go Debo. I think because I do think there's a little bit of a drop off as far as what to expect, maybe outside of Diggs. But that's who I'm going to go at 21. And mainly because
I'm worried he was going to be switched to running back. I mean, if you look at it, the last couple weeks here, like
I'd be fine with that too.
Right. I'm just saying though, like the last 5 weeks here, he kind of maybe even 6, against week 10 against the Rams, he had 5 rushing attempts. He had 5 targets. Week 11 in Jacksonville, he had 2 targets and 2 targets, and he had 8 rushes on the ground. I just feel like he might, for ESPN leagues, just be switched over from wide receiver to running back.
I think that would help his value, if anything. I would take him over Saquon as a running back.
It would be interesting.
I would probably move him up a lot, actually.
If he got definitively switched to running back, it would help him.
He would probably be. I would probably take him or like around where I took Swift, like 13. If he was, and I think he would probably be like running back, wide receiver, like a flex, basically.
I'd have to see it just because a running back we haven't talked about yet. We might, I'm not sure how soon. Eli Mitchell averaged 15.7 fantasy points a game when he was healthy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why I don't think he'll be in the running back conversation. But
yeah, I don't know. It's just because he ran more than he saw the targets through the air. I think by definition that is a running back.
We'll see where they put him. I have a bit of a surprise here at 21.
Patterson.
No, unfortunately not. I don't know that Cordell Patterson's going. We'll see if Cordell Patterson gets taken. We're running out of picks here. But I talked about the importance of like a good offense in making your fantasy studs. And I had a guy from this offense pretty high in my rankings to start the year, and it looked pretty good until he started getting unhealthy and started getting beat up. And another running back kind of swooped in. I do think that this job is going to be pretty much in the hands of one person next year, and that is Cam Akers. I think that Cam Akers is going to be my 21st overall player. We saw him really come on very strong last year at the end of the season when he had the job and when he won the job. I think that if he gets the touches, which
Cam Akers
from the Rams.
He played no downs this year, and you're picking him up.
I said I said
you're going. That's a lot of faith. Sony Michel played well.
I think so.
Daryl Henderson, Sony Michel both played well.
I agree. I think that this is a
crazy
bold pick, but
that's definitely.
But I just think the upside, if you look at the players still on the board, I think the other option for me was David Montgomery, but I believe in the Rams offense much more than I believe in the Bears offense. They have a lot of things to work out. I think that's one big thing that it comes down to. And we've seen Cam Akers perform before. I really think that talent-wise and the amount of capital invested in him, I think that will be something that comes into play. And I just think that he is the best running back that they have. There's a another guy that like we didn't mention yet, and that's J.K. Dobbins, who could be like a guy in this conversation as well. But like, I do think that Cam Akers comes back, maybe not even next year, but like in the playoffs, and
Mhm.
shows us that he can be a probably more of an RB2, but like maybe have that upside. And I think that's more of what I'm banking on here is
Mhm.
the upside to be in that like back end RB1 mix.
Okay. Interesting. You're going deep there. You put a lot of faith in guys who haven't seen the field in a year. NFL landscape changed as a whole.
Not a lot of faith, just like higher than a running back on the Bears or Falcons.
Um, I am going to go with Jamar Chase at the 22nd pick. Now, I understand some people are going to be listening to this and be like, Cody, you picked up Cooper Cup third. Now you're going to pick up Jamar Chase, which would be the equivalent to the third pick. Same person would be picking them both up. I'm going to say yes, because if you can get two stud wide receivers on your team, you are set for the whole year and you can focus on running backs and the rest of these picks and find a tight end to plug and play. Because after Mark Andrews and Kelsey, I think there's a next tier of Hawkinson and all them. Jamar Chase finished as like the 9th wide receiver or something like that. Something kind of crazily high for a team that has so many weapons on them. If you look at his season in full point leagues, he has 3 weeks, I believe, and under 10 points. Only 3. That's pretty good for a freshman year in the league here. I like it. I like the guy. I like the team. I like the potential for him. You got anything to say about Jamar Chase going 22nd?
No, I think that it's interesting. Like I would have probably went personally Diggs over him, but I can't be like that's wild. Like I don't think that's crazy. I think a lot of people expect him,
Mhm.
like we said earlier, to make a jump next year from what's already been a crazy year. So you can't really be mad at that.
Mhm. I went him over Diggs because Diggs he has one 30-point week
Mhm.
being the guy. He has one 30-point week on the year. He has a couple of 20s, but a lot of teams. He has a lot of teams. Um, love Stefan. He's an ex-Viking. Wish he came back to the Vikings, but hey, it's neither here nor there. We have JJ now, so like whatever, dude. Um, so I went with Jamar just because. I mean, obviously you have to put some respect on the guy's name who got 55 points for someone.
Yeah.
Playoff time. Could have single-handedly just won you your championship.
Mhm.
So to have that potential there, and to actually see it, because a lot of wide receivers we talk about have the potential. We always are like, this guy has the potential to go for 30 to 40 points. But then we just see him get 30.2, and that's it. That's the highest we get, which is great. But then to see a guy go like 25, 32, like a bunch of 20s, and then like jump up to a 55, like that's like the real potential you like to see. It's the end of the second round. You're getting a pick very shortly in the third. So if this pick doesn't pan out for you, you can go with a solid, you can aim for a sturdy guy, um, better floor with your next pick, which is in like 5 picks. My 23rd overall pick is Cordell Patterson.
Sure.
Jonathan Taylor, very sturdy running back, going to give you an insanely high floor. Cordell Patterson to pair him with that to have the upside of Cordell Patterson, who needs 3 touches to get you 15 and a half fantasy points. I mean, the guy can go out there for 3 drives and win you your week. Like, it's insane the potential this guy has. So to me, there's no running back left who I think has a clear cut showing of being better than Cordell Patterson, who is going to have the backfield to themselves. I mean, Mike Davis is there, but like besides this playoff time struggle, Cordell Patterson was a beast this year, and that's kind of why he fell a little bit for me. It's just because of the playoffs is still in my head, but I think he shakes off. He's going to be a great regular season player next year. So give me Cordell Patterson to pair with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I think it was between 3 running backs for me at 24, and now it is down to 2. Cordell Patterson is definitely in that mix. I think just some of the uncertainty with the Falcons is the only thing that is the issue, but and where he's going to be. I don't know if he signed a multi-year deal or not, but there's definitely a lot of question marks around that team and where they are going to go moving forward. There are a good amount of running backs. I'm kind of surprised to see how this played out. There's a lot of guys still on the board that I think a lot of people would have expected to be gone by now. Antonio Gibson, who was certainly a top 24 pick this past year.
Right.
Javonte Williams, people expecting him to jump up. Certainly.
Mhm.
I'm between 2 running backs. Stephon Diggs isn't making our list, which is pretty wild. And there's some other big-time wide receivers off as well. Whether you want to say like Godwin or we don't know where Godwin's going to be next year, so that probably has a little bit to do with it as well. Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, the CeeDee Lamb, there's some other guys there.
A lot of good third-round wide receivers is kind of how I'm phrasing it for them, just because they have the question marks. They have potential. A lot of these guys have first, wide receiver 1 potential, and not high-end wide receiver 1. Like I don't see a lot of these guys finish. Stephon Diggs, I could see if he comes back with a vengeance. But a lot of these guys I see is like a back-end wide receiver 1, whereas I think Jamar Chase is like the lowest I can go to justify a wide receiver 1.
I'm between 2 running backs with the last pick, and that is David Montgomery and Elijah Mitchell. I don't think that Raheem Mostert's going to be back next year. It's my guess. If I had to put one on,
right.
So that makes me want to lean Mitchell. I know that David Montgomery is going to be the running back in Chicago, which is, I guess, you could say that's a plus. You could say the in Chicago part dampens it a bit. I think I'm going to go Elijah Mitchell. Just more upside there. My whole thing throughout this has been solid running back that gets touches on a good offense that can score points. And that's really what decided a lot of the debates for me, especially early on when I went Dalvin and Eckler over McCaffrey and Kamara. I am willing to give up maybe some of the talent if you want to make the argument that David Montgomery is more talented than Mitchell for the right situation. So I'm going to go Mitchell. If you look, he has had numerous health things going on this season, but if you look at the opportunity, I think it's better than what David Montgomery has. I think it's better than what Javonte Williams has. And I guess the big thing for Javonte, he could jump up if Aaron Rodgers is his quarterback next year, Russell Wilson is his quarterback next year. I think that certainly might push him into this top 24, but we don't really know about that. I'm going to go with Elijah Mitchell. Just looking at his numbers, worst he got you this year, 7.3. Has 3 weeks in single digits. Also, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with over 16. So
right. I don't hate the pick. You have Derrick Henry. You pick number 1. So for this mock draft scenario, you have Derrick Henry already. I can understand going Mitchell. I can see it. Personally, I think I would have went Zeke.
Interesting.
I don't like Zeke, but I think the fact that we left Zeke, playoff Lenny, and even a little bit of James Conner
Lenny is an interesting one too.
off the list. We left all three of these guys off our top 24, but justifiably so. I think for each position, you can make the argument that who we picked is better suited for next season. Mitchell, I think, is the one where I would have, because I was considering them for Patterson. I think the upside for Patterson is much better, but Elliott has the clear-cut handcuff in Tony Pollard.
Is Elliott going to have the same role next year? That's my big
right.
question.
That's another.
Is he even going to be in Dallas?
Right. There's questions around Elliott, but I think there's questions around Mitchell too. I mean, we saw Deebo Samuel get like 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 28 rushing attempts a game later on in the season here. I mean, the guy was an absolute tank. Deebo Samuel could potentially be listed as a running back next year, which
I don't. But we also saw that with Mitchell out.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But Deebo looked so good back there. Like getting the ball into Deebo's hands, I think, is what they want to do. So that's just what kind of scares me with Mitchell. Playoff Lenny. We don't know how the whole Tampa Bay team's going to look. So that's kind of why I left him off. But I thought like those three guys, Connor, Elliott, playoff Lenny, all had like an equal shot to be your last pick. I thought you were going to go with one of them, but interesting.
What team? I don't know if you wrote down all the picks or not.
I got your team and my team, the pick.
Okay.
So it goes with who and who here.
So I was going to ask, what is your favorite pairing? This was our top 24 players. I didn't necessarily go through it as like pairing. First round, second round, I went more as like just my ranking of like best player available.
Okay.
But looking at these, you do definitely have some interesting pairings. Which one stands out to you as like the one you would be most excited to have, or like your favorite?
So later in the draft, actually, like the number 9 pick, you picked up Kelsey. And then at 16, which would be the coinciding pick, was Mixon. And I think Kelsey is an interesting one because Kelsey is going to be tight end 1 or 2. And Joe Mixon finished as running back 3 on the year, 287 total fantasy points. He won't finish as running back 3 next year just because of some big name guys injured. But he averaged almost 18 points a game. So that's an interesting one for me. I kind of like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. I think that's 10 and 15. That's an interesting one because you have such a powerful wide receiver core. You have 2 guys who can arguably be the best wide receiver in all of football on your team. So the trade offers you're going to get are going to be immaculate. You could keep them and just ride the wave to victory because we left off some very high or some like running back 2s that we left off the board that you're going to be able to pick up with those picks. I think my favorite though is Mark Andrews and Aaron Jones.
Interesting.
It's a toss-up. It's either Devontae and Tyreek or Aaron Jones and Mark Andrews. I just think Mark Andrews going with Aaron Jones, you have what could be the best tight end in football in Mark Andrews. And you have Aaron Jones, who he missed time this year. And so he had some bad games due to that. But he's an RB1 every year. Like, I don't think people realize that he is consistently an RB1. Not the flashiest player, but he has some weeks that he just lights up the field. So for me, I think it's either going with a 10th or 11th pick with either Devontae and Tyreek or 11 with Mark Andrews and Aaron Jones. What about you?
I think JT Cordero is an interesting one, and Derrick Henry, Elijah Mitchell. Those are very interesting running back like powerhouses. And one of the wild things about that is like if you really just want to like set up your running back position, you could go like Derrick Henry, Elijah Mitchell, and then just take
playoff Lenny or Zeke or someone
playoff Lenny. take David Montgomery, or
Yep.
if you want to go wide receiver, Diggs is still there. Like
Diggs, Deontay Johnson, Keenan Allen.
that's pretty wild.
Right.
My favorite pairing though is one I'm surprised you didn't mention.
Was it Cooper Cup, Jamar Chase?
No, it is at the 8 and 17 spot with Alvin Kamara and Justin Jefferson. I mean, if you look at guys where you say like this guy can be the RB1 and this guy can be the wide receiver one, I think that
Right.
that is one of the areas where I would feel the most confident about that. With both guys finishing top of their position, I just think that's like pretty star-studded. I thought Kamara at 8, which I do think is very realistic.
I think our list was pretty realistic on those first. I think it was realistic all the way, but I think you can make the argument for CMC and Harris, who both have potential and did beat out Kamara this year. Not CMC, but when CMC was healthy.
Mhm.
I didn't go Kamara and JJ just because I think the Vikings team. I love Justin Jefferson, absolutely great wide receiver. We just have Dalvin Cook coming back healthy. We're gonna have Adam Thielen coming back. We're gonna have Irv Smith coming back. We're gonna have some pieces. Like I'm with you, JJ, one of the 4 or 5 guys in the league who, if he drops 40 points, you're not gonna be like, that was so crazy and unexpected. It's like, oh, Justin Jefferson doing Justin Jefferson things. Same with Kamara. Kamara has a chance to go for 5 points or has a chance to go for 40. Just depends on who the quarterback situation is back there. I liked it. I just didn't. I just thought JJ might go down a little bit, whereas I thought Mark Andrews and Aaron Jones are about where I think they could finish next year.
Yeah, I think that those guys could like open things. I think that this Minnesota offense with a new coach, maybe an offensive coach, could open some stuff up and unlock next level, hopefully, for this offense.
Right.
And I just I don't feel confident. Like I wouldn't say that Justin Jefferson is going to be the wide receiver one next year, or else I probably would have had him higher than 17. But yeah, like I think that the potential is certainly there for him to finish pretty high next year. Dalvin, Cam Akers is like obviously I think that might be like one of the highest upsides out of anybody. Because it's just two like solid offenses. One like that's debatably one of the best offenses in football, and then another that's like pretty good, like are good and like one of the best running backs in football. So I think that is an interesting one. I think that's a little bit more like one of the most boom bust, just with Dalvin's injury history and Cam Akers coming off a big injury, and we don't really know as much about the situation. But
I do, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I think that is pretty boom bust. I do have a question. Which pairing do you like the least? Which one would you feel the worst about? I mean, obviously, if you get either of these pairings, you're going to be probably okay. But which pairing do you feel the least comfortable? Like if you finished and you got both these guys, which one would you feel least comfortable with?
I don't think you're going to be happy. I'm going to probably go Mark Andrews and Aaron Jones. I think for me, it's like I think Mark Andrews, I would have personally probably taken like more in the 18 like range. So I think it's like I would have probably held off a little bit longer on him, and then Aaron Jones scares me a bit just with where we've seen his volume. I get that like Aaron Jones is on a good enough offense where he can overcome that. But I also I think that there's AJ Dillon, I don't think I think he's going to get more work, if anything, and become like a bigger part of this offense, if anything, next year. And I just think that if you're looking for good offense and volume, there are some guys on the board like a Joe Mixon that I would
Mhm.
feel better with getting there.
Yeah, I think Mark Andrews makes the best argument to be the tight end one. Kelsey went 2 picks before him, so I think that was the justification for it, was that Travis Kelsey is no longer head and shoulders above everyone
Hmm.
just because he finished below Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had this tremendous playoff tear, which is
Agreed.
kind of where I think more people need to look a little bit. Because if you look at some of these guys, a lot of people had a good regular season, i.e., Cordell Patterson had a great regular season, but in the playoffs, he kind of busted for you. So I think people need to look into the playoffs a little bit more because that's where you want to win. Aaron Jones scares me a little bit, but if he scares you that much, you can always pick any of these other guys behind him to go
Yeah,
with
I
it.
think it's more of the
So,
pairing.
right.
Like you said, like I would rather if it was Joe Mixon, I would certainly feel better about it.
Mhm.
Which is why I couldn't say like if I'm going to take a tight end early, I have to feel really good about the
Mhm.
other person I take,
Right. I
and I
mean,
don't.
Aaron Jones went 14, Mixon went 16, so he will be on the board in our scenario here if you did want to steal him.
Yeah,
I didn't feel good about your 12 and 13. I did not feel good about the back to back
I
there.
don't feel great about that one now.
Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift were is it's just not the pair that I.
But if you look at like somebody who was in the championship in our main league, like
Mhm.
that's the pairing that got him there too in the beginning of the season. Like that's what sent them set
Yeah.
up their season.
I just think next year it's going to be a little different. I just don't. I mean, I love Derrick Henry, so I think Derrick Henry and anyone else. I wouldn't have gone Mitchell personally, but I mean, it's the last pick. You can go of almost anyone. Jonathan Taylor and Cordell Patterson's boom is great. Cup and
I
Chase
agree.
are great together. Dalvin and Akers, you made a great point. Great boom bust potential for Akers, and Dalvin obviously has potential
I think
there.
where Debo is a really good pairing too.
Debo and Eckler, I thought was fantastic. I really like that one. Josh Allen and CMC, I think have individual. They're both carrying the team, so I think it's great. Saquon and Harris, if Saquon's healthy, I think that's a dynamic duo. Um, JJ and Kamara, some concerns there, but it's fine. I mean, Mixon and Kelsey, I like that. I think I think Mixon and Kelsey is comparable to Mark Andrews and Aaron Jones because you can plug and play them. Tyreek and Devontae, I love them because you have 2 wide receivers. It's just the fact that you have no running back in the first 2 rounds.
But it's surprising the guys that are still there. If you wanted to go like zero RB just to like
Right.
think about who's still on the board right now,
Mhm.
David Montgomery, Javante Williams, Miles Sanders is another guy that's like I would say I was like I wrote down his name. I didn't end up going with him and he was never like seriously in the conversation too much. But like he is a guy I'm trying to think of other guys that are there. James Robinson. It'll be interesting to see where he works out with ETN. Obviously, Leonard Fournette, CH, J.K. Dobbins, uh, Zeke. There's plenty of guys.
Right. I Yeah, I think it's just the Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift pairing. I get it. They're both very good. Um,
That would probably be up there for me as well.
yeah, I think the rest of them I can make an argument for. I It's just because I think like all the good wide receiver, or not all the good, that just sounds bad, but like Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Deontay Johnson, like these guys are going to be gone. With pairings with Derrick Henry, Mitchell, JT, Patterson, Dalvin, and Akers. They're going to be gone with picks like that who are picking way before. So you're going to be stuck with Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, who are going to be back in running back ones at best. And then you're
I
going
don't
to
know
be
about that. I think that Nick Chubb has like top five possibility.
Nick Chubb by himself has top 5 potential. Nick Chubb with
And
Kareem
Swift.
Hunt, where Kareem Hunt was
I
digging
still think
into
he.
the works. I
I think
just
he has. I don't think he has like top potential, but I think he has like top five potential.
I could see him at like
He put up
5.
two 20-point games. That's like I was surprised. Like I early on the season didn't want Nick Chubb as much as some of the other guys because I was worried about that. I think I've kind of like turned the tide on that a little bit. I feel solid about him. Like you're not going to lose your league because of Nick Chubb, and I don't think you're going to lose because of Swift either, especially in PPR. I agree that it's probably not my favorite pairing, but I
Yeah.
also don't know. Like you're also taking the 12th player overall, so I'm not sure like if that's necessarily where you want to be picking in the first place.
If you do have 12, I think some of the people behind him, I'd put Mixon in the same category as those guys.
Agreed.
And Tyreek Hill was on the board, Jamar Chase, Debo. So I would probably go with one of them instead of Swift if I was personally picking at 12. But I mean,
I think Mixon was the person that I was between with Swift, but I honestly like Swift like there.
Yeah.
Like I do think that he's in my mind was the best player
Mhm.
there that I would go with. I don't know. I mean, in very traditional fashion, we decided to finish off our
Finish it off
last
strong. 2 hours.
episode with a hefty 2-hour show. Is there any player like I guess who would be last question, quick answer. Who would
Mhm.
be your top pick of the third round?
Top pick of the third round to pair with Derrick Henry, Elijah Mitchell would be Deontay Johnson or Stephon Diggs.
I would go Diggs or Javonte Williams, depending on how you want to build your team.
Yeah. I think I personally need a wide receiver.
Mhm.
I kind of learned that my mistake this year. I went 3 running back heavy, traded away my third round pick for Keenan Allen. My third and fourth, on paper, it looked really bad right when I did it. It was Keenan Allen, or I was getting Keenan Allen. I was giving away my third round pick, which was
Chris Carson.
Chris Carson, and my fourth round pick, which was Robbie Anderson, which on paper looked really, really bad. But then if I
It only looked bad because you took
because I took Chris Carson right before Keenan Allen was taken.
yes,
So I could have
and then
quite
traded 2
easily.
picks to get
Right.
Keenan Allen. Yes,
But if I kept it, Keenan Allen outperformed both those guys
Sure.
head and shoulders this year.
you did end up trading Keenan Allen though.
Traded Keenan Allen, I think, for no one. But but anyway, what I was trying to say is,
But in a
I think-
vacuum, it was a great move.
in a vacuum, it makes so much sense now. But I think I learned my lesson that I think you do need, unless there's someone crazy there, in the third round, I think you should go, at least 2-1, if not 1-1-1. In terms of positional players, I think you should try to diversify a little bit and have a little bit more luck that way. But whatever strategy works for you,
Yeah. I'm kind of like the opposite there. I don't mind 3 running backs early to secure it. Maybe because it worked for me. I didn't take 3 in the first 3 picks. I actually was going to if Carson fell to me. So luckily that didn't happen. I guess I got Terry McLaurin instead. So it didn't really. Third round wasn't really my round.
Third round, I don't think it was anyone's round this year. Third
I
round,
got Darrell Henderson in the 4th. So like I would say a little bit of bias there that taking 3 running backs early helped me.
I think it worked for you.
And that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be like biased based off of what's worked for you in the past.
Right.
So
This year did not work for me. So good luck.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 1 next year. He was my other answer. If I wasn't going to say Diggs, I was going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I think he does. Honest answer: what round do you think Amon-Ra St. Brown should be picked up next year? I'm saying
it's hard to like.
I'm saying 4th round he should be picked up.
I don't know. Like it's hard to say because there's so many great wide receivers still on the board. Like I'm not taking him. Obviously, you're not taking him over Diggs. You're not taking him over. I'm not taking him over CD. I think that like the question of Godwin's still out there. AJ Brown. Do you think AJ Brown's going to come back? Waddle. DK still. There's DeAndre Hopkins still. There's T. Higgins still. Deontay Johnson. Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. Like, there's a lot of wide receivers still on the board. Robbie Woods is still there as well.
OBJ.
So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and we don't even know where OBJ is going to be. Michael Thomas is
I
still
yeah.
on the board. He's somebody who's going to probably come into the consideration right around the Diggs time as well. So, like, Hunter Renfro, there's like a lot of names.
That is interesting. We did not mention Michael Thomas, the top 24 here.
I don't think like he should be.
Jameis, I think, is an if Jameis is the quarterback, I think
don't know.
third round is like when he should be picked up because he's coming back a year from injury. New quarterback, but Jameis is not afraid to go 30 for 30 here. 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions for people who don't know, and just throw the ball all over the place. So that's just why I don't think I put Michael Thomas up there for me. But yeah, there's a lot of good wide receivers who should be getting picked up in the third and fourth round. There's a lot of guys who have boom potential, and it depends what you're going for. If you're going for guys who might go for 5 points or might go for 25 points, or if you want a guy who's going to get you 10 to 20 points week in, week out, I think that's where the conversation comes into play is in the third and fourth round for these wide receivers.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk with Michael Thomas too. Like, we don't that what happened this year is pretty like weird, and we don't know what kind of terms they are on. So like, there's definitely a risk with taking a guy that we haven't seen in that long, and a guy who has a little bit of an injury history over the last 2 years. But it'll be interesting. Like, that's the thing that I think pushes Amon-Ra St. Brown back is like, there's so many wide receivers that like our top 24 was pretty loaded down with running back. I think there's so many wide receivers that are still left that you can probably get Amon-Ra like fairly late and feel pretty good about it. Like, I don't think his name would come into play until at least the 5th round, and I think that might even be a bit.
I think it's a bit early. I mean, being honest, I think there's such.
Lockett. I didn't even mention Hollywood either. So like,
yeah, no, there's so many wide receivers who actually need to be picked up in the 3rd, 4th, 5th. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is being in all seriousness, great wide receiver for bye weeks. I think
he could be a weekly starter.
He could be a weekly starter, but
also
again,
not if everyone's healthy, which is what.
If everyone's healthy, which is kind of where I'm going, I think the 6th or 7th round would be an honest option for me to start looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Hunter Renfro goes around before him, maybe the 5th or 6th at best for Hunter Renfro. Because there are so many wide receivers in the NFL who have wide receiver 1 upside, not top end wide receiver 1, but like wide receiver 7 to wide receiver 15 is a solid range for a lot of these guys. Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Stephon, OBJ, Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett, DK. All these guys have that potential to do it. And so I think like Amon-Ra St. Brown is a solid player. And
we're going to have rookies coming in. Like, this is a really good rookie wide receiver class, too. So there's a lot of guys. And that's probably why we have so many running backs early, because there are a lot of guys at wide receivers.
Exactly.
But that is our show for today. That is our last Tuesday show of the year. Pretty loaded one. I think it was like very information dense, which I suppose is a good thing. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Thank you for watching, not only today, but all season long.
Right.
We will be back on Sunday, 11:30 to 12:30 to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about for our last episode of the year. So come hang out with us on Sunday, 11:30 Eastern to 12:30 with any questions you guys may have. And yeah, that is it for us today. We will see you then.